Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order at 5:08. And the first item on our agenda is a voting in a chair of this committee. I am very happy to not be the chair. If somebody else would like to chair this committee, we can entertain those kind of nominations right now. Does anybody else have a strong desire to, I see that, Rupert, to not be,
I don't have to go to it.
I'm
putting my
I just want to be able to make sure that I can hear you all.
Looks like everybody got muted. Let's see.
I know, I apologize. I was trying to unmute and I believe I muted by mistake. So if somebody said something, I do apologize. I did not hear it. Does anybody have a desire to be chair?
This could be like Spartacus. We could all volunteer at once.
It would be great for somebody to be chair that feels like they would like to run these meetings and just kind of take care of the really the running of the meeting, because then we could have a secretary that takes care of sort of emails or alerting people of meetings, that sort of thing. So if that's what you're worried about, we can have a secretary do that part.
Mackenzie, I'm working out of my car. I think it would be foolish of me to try to be the one running the meetings.
Okay, I hear ya.
Oh,
Rupert,
I nominate Mackenzie.
Yeah. I mean, I will continue to do it if honestly, if nobody else wants to, but I do really want to make sure that if somebody has an interest, that they by all means speak up, and I'm happy to let them be chair.
Mackenzie, having been in several committees that you are the chair of, I really think you're great at it.
Oh, thanks. All right. I will then let's just take that vote so it's on the record, and we'll move on. So,
So Jane nominated Mackenzie. I second the motion. That's Rupert.
Great. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, so let's just move forward with that. Thank you. Next on the agenda, I do want to make sure that everybody understands the format that we're using. So I don't know if you can hear on your side, but I actually had to start recording this meeting, which means that it then not only is it recorded visually, but also a transcript is made. So anything that is said is going to be in the transcript. So just keep that in mind when you're talking, that your voice and your face are being recorded. And then what will happen is, Rupert, if you're going to stay the secretary, Rupert will get the transcript. He will fix it up a little bit, because the transcript doesn't actually say who was speaking. It just says that somebody was speaking. So a little bit of wordsmithing will have to happen to the transcript, and then that becomes the public minutes for this meeting. The video also will go into at some point will go onto a public platform, so that anybody who would like to log in could watch the meeting, and then of course get the minutes, just like any other committee meeting has minutes. So I just want to make sure you aware of that right from the beginning, that for those of you on camera, you are being videoed, and everybody's voice is when they're speaking is going to be in the transcript. Yes, Rupert.
I've been so overwhelmed with work and other things lately. It would probably be best, because time is of the essence here, if someone else felt like they could do the secretary for this subcommittee.
Okay, so then that's something that we would let's decide that now. Then we do need a secretary. Again, the nice thing is you're going to get a printed out transcript, so there's less work than maybe a regular meeting you might have, but you will have to go in and just, you will have to take minutes during the meeting because you want to make sure you know who said what. So when you get that transcript, you can fix it and put the person's name. So, Rupert said, blah, 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 blah. Jane said, blah, blah, blah. Who made the motion, who seconded the motion. Those names don't go into the record, into the transcript. You'll have to add them and kind of fix up the transcript a little bit. So, anybody
Could
have
I
anything
just
to
make
say?
Sure.
a thought as you're saying this, Mackenzie, is that maybe as much as possible, we could identify ourselves when we talk. I know it's easy to forget doing that in the middle of saying something, but that would probably make it easier for whoever's doing this to just say, okay, Jane is now saying
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I think so. Because then I think then that would mean that the name would come out in the transcript. But we certainly do still need to have somebody taking notes along the way, at least to help fill in, that transcript and make it more user friendly. So, Jane, I think that's a good idea. Does anybody have, would anybody like to be secretary for these meetings? I can't be president and secretary, so somebody else has got to do it. And I don't know that it needs, honestly, to be the same person every time. I obviously that would be ideal, but I do also know that, there are going to be probably times where there's going to be conflicts where you can't attend. So I think, if we had somebody being the secretary for this meeting and it had to be somebody different for next meeting, I think that's doable as well.
Okay. Well, I'm willing to volunteer if, at least for this meeting, to take notes. I like the idea that the transcript will be somewhat available to me.
It definitely will. Yep.
Okay.
That was Jane volunteering.
I'll second that motion.
All right. So I have a nomination for Jane, seconded by Dan. Anybody else like to throw their hat in the ring? All right, then all in favor of Jane being the secretary for today?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any,
Charlie still with us?
Yes, I said aye.
okay. Just say it nice and loud so we can hear you. Great. So Jane, if you wouldn't mind just taking notes for this meeting.
Okay.
Then the next thing we need to do is decide on interview questions, and then we can go through and start looking at the different applications, and hopefully you've been able to narrow it down to 3, 4, 5 at the most that you want to consider for the next round that we can discuss. So I know that the trustees were given some sample questions at one of our trustee meetings. We certainly can go over those or add any other ones that people feel are, that they feel important to make sure that we ask. In your packet, you received a interview question rating form, an example of one. It had, space for the question and then a kind of a rubric. 1 did not answer, 2 poorly answered, 3 fair, 4 good, 5 excellent. If everybody kind of pull that out or at least be somewhat familiar with it. Thank you, Rupert. My camera doesn't work. Appreciate that. This format has been used in a lot of different hiring process. I know Jane and I probably recognize this from school. We've used something similar to this. Other town departments have also used it. I think it's a worthwhile format unless anybody feels very strongly against it. I think it's probably the format that we should use. And then we use it for each candidate gets their own, their own rating form. So we have a paper, kind of a paper document of how the interview went for each candidate that we choose. So if people feeling good about the form to use? Okay. So then we just need to come up with our questions. And go ahead, Rupert.
I have a process suggestion from being at some meetings. It may not be necessary with just the 6 of us, but Mackenzie, you can see who's muted and who's unmuted, right?
I can.
So if you Sorry, I'm talking. If you mute yourself when you're listening, and if you want to say something, you unmute yourself, then Mackenzie can say, hang on, Dan, I'll get to you in a second, but Dan's up next, or whatever, just to cue things.
Yep, that would be good. And if I don't for whatever reason see you, if you're on camera, obviously you can wave to me. But I also actually, it's a good point. There are just for those not as familiar with the GoToMeeting, on that toolbar, there is a section where it has a down towards the bottom underneath webcam, it says questions and it says chat. That's the other option, questions. So it's kind of like you can open that and actually type in a question. So if for some reason I'm not seeing you or there's a lot of discussion happening, that's another way that you can communicate. Does everybody see that? So in that big kind of rectangle of a whole bunch of different things, the control panel it's called, somewhat towards the bottom, there's a little gray part that says questions. And you have to kind of click on the little arrow and that will pull it down for you. And it becomes just like a box that you can type into. This will also come out as a transcript. So Jane, this is also recorded. But if for whatever reason you felt like you needed to type in a question, I can see the questions. And then I can either type an answer or say the answer. And if it's a question that's just meant for you or a question that you just want to ask for everybody, I can answer it either just to you or to everybody. So that's just another tool I wanted to make sure I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, there's just 6 of us, so I didn't mute everybody. I figured we could take turns talking, but you on your own can mute yourself, which might be helpful, especially if there's something noisy going on around you, and then unmute yourself when you want to talk.
I see the chat thing and it's very quiet here. I don't really see a need to mute and unmute, but
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna, use your discretion.
could I say one thing just for the record, since it's on the record?
Sure.
I don't know what you're seeing when you see my picture, but I know what I see. And I like the record to indicate I do not live in a psychedelic house. I don't know why everything is purple and yellow and green. It just is. So.
And it does look like that. It's very fancy looking.
Yeah, okay.
And Jane, you need to unmute yourself because I think you've muted yourself.
It looks like the Northern Lights.
I don't live in my car, Dan, so I get it.
Okay.
Listen, we're all just doing the best we can here. I appreciate everybody's method and mode of making this happen. So how would you like to do this? Would you like to go through the sample questions that the trustees were given? Do you have questions that you've already formulated that you know that you want to make sure are asked? I'm looking for some guidance as to how you would like to proceed.
What are the questions the trustees were given?
Okay, I can read them. So sample question number 1 is, the town manager has told you that it is necessary for the library to reduce its budget for the next fiscal year by 10%. How would you approach the problem with your trustees and with your staff? So that's a question. So basically just if you had to cut the budget, how would you handle that? Question number 2, you've just started to work as director and it is time for your first meeting with your department heads and your staff. Which would you meet with first and what would you plan to tell them? That's kind of an interesting one. So would you start with your department heads first or your staff, and what would you tell them? Number 3, the line is very long at the circulation desk, or I'm sorry, the checkout desk, and people are getting restless. How would you deal with this situation? So maybe an interpersonal logistics question. Number 4, what attracted you to the public library profession? What do you enjoy most about the field and what do you like the least? Number 5, and you can even just jot down the number if you like the question and I can go back to it. Number 5, the children's room is one of the most heavily used departments within the library and is currently without a head. Would you please describe the candidate that you would like to see head this department? What type of programs would you like to see in the children's room? Number 6, in times like these of limited financial resources to spread over all the services the town would like to offer and the public would like to have, how would you evaluate which should be the priorities for the library relative to other services? How would you communicate these priorities to the town manager, finance committee, and town meeting? Number 7, what do you think the relationship should be between the library and the libraries in the public school? Schools, more than one, sorry. Number 8, how have you been involved with the adoption of a policy manual or procedures or revision of an existing one? If so, what was your role? Number 9, what role do you see a library playing in the community? Number 10, how much of an impact should the library have on a community? And number 11, are you willing to work weekend hours? And that one was specifically because currently we have our library being open on a Sunday, which is not a typical, Monday through Friday work schedule. So,
Could I ask a question?
absolutely.
Do you or does anybody on this committee know if those were questions that were asked of Barbara? And is there anyone on the committee now who is on Barbara's search committee? And
No.
do you think those questions? So Mackenzie, do you think those questions came from, I was thinking as I was going through as I first started thinking about being on this committee, I guess I was wondering if we had access to those questions from the last time you had a search committee. So.
Yeah, so I suspect that these questions came from Barbara as just thoughtful questions that, should be asked of a director. I don't know where the questions would be from Barbara since it was a while ago that she was hired. So I can't really speak to to that. Jean, you, I think, Andrea would have been the latest hire at the library. Do you recognize any of these questions as questions that you were asked, or do you have any history of where you think these questions came from?
Those are not questions I was asked, and they were not questions we asked Shannon or Andrea, but they wouldn't really be appropriate for a library assistant.
Yeah, that's true.
If you had asked me those questions, I wouldn't have the job because, no.
Yeah, okay. Yep, that makes sense. Rupert?
I think to some extent we may want to change questions when we narrow down our field, because there may be some other candidates where we really are curious about their strengths in a certain area or another, that we won't know until we have our short list.
I agree. I think, though, to be consistent across all of the candidates, we need to at least have a base set of questions to ask. And then if there are specific other questions, we can certainly ask them at the end. But since we're rating them and we're using the same form for all of them, I do want to build at least a base of questions that we make sure we ask everybody. If we go to like a second round of interviews, I don't see why we couldn't create a second round of interview questions as well. But just to be consistent, I want to make sure that we ask everybody at least X number of questions that are the same.
I understand that. But we're not doing interviews today, are we?
We are not doing interviews today. I think, again, that's something we could plan out. In my mind, my thought was we would narrow down today and be prepared next time to interview. That was how I was thinking the timeline was going to go. So today was kind of be all the prep. We were going to narrow it down. We were going to have our questions narrowed down and be ready. And then when we met again, it was because we were going to actually start interviewing those pool. But that was just how I envisioned it going. We can certainly change it if other people feel differently.
I can respond to a couple of these questions if you like. This is Rupert again. I think number 10 needs to be reworded somewhat because it's 10%, 20% kind of thing, and we want to elicit more of an open response. Like, how can a library have the greatest impact on the community instead of how much impact?
Okay.
And just a couple of thoughts. I'm glad that we had a question about children's librarian. I think I'd be curious to find out more about interviewees' experiences with different populations as well, youth populations, older adults, and stuff like that. And I think that it would be really informative to go into that a little bit with all of our interviewees.
So were you thinking you wanted to add on to a question that was already there or create a whole new question?
I hadn't gotten that far yet in my thinking.
Okay. I like the idea though of what you're saying. Jane?
And
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, to piggyback on that, I mean, a couple of these questions to me sounded like they weren't quite a match with our library. You know, do we have department heads and things like that? And I definitely agree with Rupert. I think you want a question that is more, what does this person see? How is, what am I trying to say? Well, it's kind of what you said about that there's different populations, not just the children's room. I mean, I think you might be interested in hearing what this person says about adult programming and certainly teen programming or whatever with this special room. So yeah, there were, I guess, a couple questions that just didn't sound quite like they made sense for this particular library. And I agree, the one about children's department and the one sort of about your first staff meeting and who would you talk to first, your department head or your staff? That just didn't seem to make sense to me.
Sure. And again, these are just sample questions, so we can do whatever we want with them. Yep, Daniel. Dan.
If we were to revise number 5 so that it reads, the children's room is one of the most heavily used departments within the library. What type of programs would you like to see in the children's room and others, teens and adult? Not really, what do you want for a department head, and we'll describe what they are or whatever. It's not like we had a staff of 15 to choose from. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's been any real move to hire a children's librarian, or the money hasn't, we haven't ever talked about that. So it's sort of an unfair question
I
to
agree.
let them think they might be.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, again, to Jane's point, I think that was just a question that didn't really fit our needs, but with Dan's, correction, I think it could. So Dan, can you read that again for me?
The children's room is one of the most heavily used departments within the library. Then we start crossing out stuff until you get to what type of programs would you like to see in the children's room and others, teens and adults. Kind of covers all the bases, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is Rupert again. Thank you, Dan. I think what I want to hear from candidates is what their experience is with programming in those areas and what their vision is as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we could say, so what type of programming would you like to see in the children's room and other teen and adults? And maybe, what is your experiences with teen and adult programming?
This is Dan, that would work for me.
I'm sorry, say that again.
This is Dan, that what Mackenzie just said sounds fine to me. Adding on at the bottom and what experience do you have in these areas?
Rupert, does that get to what you want, or do we still need to think about it?
Well, I think we may want to have some time to to craft them, look at the wording and craft them, and bring them back. I think it's too much for one question to ask about all three areas. I think we need to break it up somehow.
That's true. Yeah, they get lost in the question.
Right. But we can keep in mind that we can always have follow-up questions for each question, like, oh, and so, give me an example of what you did when you did children's library work, or, probe that way once the question has been opened.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a little hard not having the questions in front of us.
I know. What I can say to that is, and I just would like to, I'll check with Brian too to make sure there's not an issue with doing this, but I can certainly send the sample questions to you, although now I've written on mine. I don't have a way to, I don't have it digitally, so I only have it in paper form, but I can certainly, take a picture and send it to you. And then if you want to have another meeting and where we just focus on the questions, and hopefully it's just kind of a short meeting, we can certainly do that if people are feeling that that's an easier way to deal with it. Jean?
I think it's a better idea. It's sort of a lot for one meeting to narrow down the candidates and then come up with really good questions. I'd feel better knowing which people we were thinking of interviewing and then sort of getting our questions aimed at those 5 or 6 people.
Okay. I mean, that seems reasonable to me. How are others feeling about that? Yes. Yep. Yes. So,
And-
Charlie, I just want to make sure your
I
voice is
agree
heard.
with that.
Okay. Okay. I think that's reasonable. Yes, Jane.
I almost wonder if we could, or anybody who felt like it could sort of work on some questions leading up to that meeting so that we, is that okay in this kind of setting, Mackenzie, that?
So on your own, you can certainly do that. It's just that you can't be meeting with other people without it being an open meeting. So
Right,
certainly on your own, yeah, absolutely. If you want to think about, like to Jean's point, once we know who our candidates are, if you want to go back through their resumes, if you want to look at that sort of information, I think that's all fine in preparation for our next meeting. But just the narrowing down and the deciding on the questions, all that has to be done in open meeting, in an open meeting.
Because a couple of thoughts I'm having. One is that a lot of them in their applications, in their resumes, give us lists of all the wonderful things they've done, which is, was fun to read and all of that. And I'm in thinking myself back towards interview questions that I've had posed. Sometimes those questions that are more specific, like tell us what you thought was the most successful and least successful program you've done with children, teens, adults. Maybe once, if we narrow down our candidates, we can look at what they have told us and then see from that what we want to dig into a little bit more. But I think it's true that almost being more specific and seeing how they answer that. I don't know, that's what I can think of from interviews that I've been in where I felt kind of like, oh yeah, I really got to explain what I thought was my strength. And then also, inevitably you're asked about things that didn't go so well, your weaknesses. And I think that's important for us to hear too. What is the candidate's perception of?
Yep. I think
worked well. So.
I think that sounds very reasonable. The only thing I will just reiterate is that whatever the questions are, we just need to make sure that we ask all of the candidates that we're choosing to interview at least those questions. We can certainly follow up if they say something interesting and you want to dig a little deeper, but we at least need to have a base set of questions that we ask everybody.
Right,
so
good.
That's fine. I think that's a good idea. So I will send these to you again. I've written on them, so you'll just have to excuse my writing. But at least you'll know what the sample questions are. But by no means do we need to stick with them. If people have other questions that are better and more tailored to our candidates, I think that would be great. So with that said, why don't we then move on, unless anybody else has anything to say about that?
Now,
Yep, Jan?
the questions you were reading are ones that were sent to the trustees, correct?
Yes.
And there's this other list of sample questions and topics that came with the packet. It's 15 other questions.
Other sample questions that came with the packet.
The heading says sample questions and topics. And it
Oh.
came along with 37 other questions we should not ask.
Wait, what?
All right, let me fish through all of my papers here and pull that out.
This is Rupert. I don't think I have that in my packet.
Do you have it, Dan, that you can put up to the camera?
I don't know if you can see it.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
I don't have that, Dan.
Okay.
No, me
Well,
either.
I'm not on any other committees. Actually, you know, this says sample questions at the bottom of the one you was working on, says page 1. This says page 2.
Interesting. Dan, if you wouldn't mind taking a picture of that with your phone, if you have a way to scan it in,
Yeah, I can scan it and send it to everybody.
that would be great. I don't, for whatever reason, that didn't get into anybody else's packet, it sounds like.
Well, I believe it came with the packet. It's with all my stuff, and I'm not on any other committees where anybody would have sent me sample questions. So, and they're all related to library. I will scan and send.
Okay,
I don't
great.
know. Sorry, it's just Brian. I heard you guys talking in the background. That didn't come from me, so I don't know if that maybe
Really?
Okay, well, I think
But-
either way, they're worth
Yeah.
looking at. So Dan, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah, I
sending
will.
that to us, it's just
will.
another option for us. So I think that would be great.
Okay.
So if nobody else has anything more to say on that topic, we'll then switch to our candidates. I know we got a nice healthy number, so that was great. A lot of resumes to read through. Again, I do want to mention that everything is being recorded. And Brian did a wonderful job of redacting all of the information. But of course, you know, being in a small town and with all small towns around us, just by various other means, you may know who these applicants are. But we are going to, for the purposes of these meetings, refer to them by their letter. So application A, application B, application C. So when you speak of some applicant, if you could make sure that you're saying what the letter applicant is so we can all follow along. And again, if by some, you know, mistake or oversight, there's some revealing information, just again, we're trying to be thoughtful of everyone's confidentiality. So please just try and refer to them only as the applicant and not as some other way that somebody might be able to identify who it was that you were speaking about as best you can. I know this is a little bit of a different way to do a hiring committee, being in open session, and then of course being on you know, virtual meetings. So we're going to do the best that we can in this kind of unusual circumstance. The hope was that everybody had a chance to read through them and could narrow down some that they felt were the strongest candidates and ones that they wanted to move into the interview section. So I'm happy to entertain ideas on how you want to manage this. Do we want to one at a time just give the letter name of the people that we want to go through? Do we want to go through them one at a time and kind of vote? How do you want to manage telling everybody who your candidates are that you want to pick? Dan?
I'd just like to ask if everyone has looked at the spreadsheet with qualifications, minimum, preferred, that Brian sent, and has everyone marked down on that spreadsheet check marks or yes or no, whatever on each of these categories.
No,
Jean, that's not how you did it?
that's not how I did it as I went through.
Okay.
I mean, I made my own notes, but I saw the spreadsheet. I don't think I have it with me. I might have it with me right now. But no, that's not how I did it. But that I will go home and do it that way.
Well, I'm not saying that's the way it has to be done. That's how I did it.
Okay,
And some of them I just wrote down. I write no because their application didn't seem to say they had experience or they didn't have whatever it was. Some of them I put yes. I think 3 of them I put maybe.
Mhm.
And my thought is, Mackenzie,
Yep.
if we could agree on the ones that I don't know if everybody will agree with me when I say no, but if we can agree on the ones to say no, that just narrows them right out of there, and then we can look at the other ones.
Okay. Dan, do you want to, maybe you could lead that part? Do you have an idea how you want to manage that? I'm happy to let you lead that part.
I would start. Have others looked at the spreadsheet like that, or
I have, Dan, yes.
okay, okay.
So that was Charlie. Looks like Rupert has, looks like Jane has, I have as well. And Jean,
Okay.
it's okay if you didn't do it that way, but it sounds like you at least had a system that you were using.
I did.
Okay.
I did have a system. I somehow missed that spreadsheet was there for that purpose.
Okay.
If you're willing, I'll go down the list of the spreadsheet and say why. Jean has her pile with her, and if anybody disagrees, I'll just put a note, we disagree, and then we'll come back to them. Is that
Okay. I
acceptable?
think just do it slow enough that we can make sure we hear everybody's voices if they're,
Okay.
different than yours.
So just to be clear, this is Rupert again. You're looking to do a first cut based on minimum qualifications?
Pretty much.
Cool.
Starting with applicant A, I had a no. I didn't see clear indication that the person had 3 to 5 years of library administration experience. Most of them, I just assume they have a driver's license. Hard to tell. Sorry.
And I don't know that you need to go, we could just say no, and does anybody feel differently?
All right.
Excellent.
It might save you some time, if we all
Okay.
feel the same way.
All right. Well, I started with A. I said no.
I said no.
I said no.
I said no. I didn't feel like there was evidence of knowledge of budgetary and personnel management practices.
Okay. I said no as well.
I also said no.
Okay,
Okay.
great. I think that's everybody's voice, right? Please stop me if I'm missing anybody.
On applicant B, I also said no. The application didn't seem to be very complete to me.
I also said no. There's actually no application, just a resume and a cover letter.
I will say also in the cover letter, they reference the wrong town.
I noticed
A couple
that.
of them did. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. So that was a no for me, for many reasons, but that one.
I had them, this is Rupert, I had them in a probably not pile because I didn't think they had supervisory experience. Or I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Jane says no.
Okay.
Charlie says no.
Okay. Excellent. Moving right along.
Okay. The next no that I had was G, applicant G.
Oh, okay. Does anybody have a one before G that they did not feel was strong enough? Jean, which one did you think?
Yes.
No.
Applicant D has worked only in schools.
E is in
No,
dog.
D is in dog. Yes, that person has had only school librarian experience. And I don't really feel that will carry over as well to the public library.
Okay. I had also made a note K through 8, whatever it was, X years, 20 years or something. And I think I had the same reservation on D, but it looked like it met the qualifications. But anybody else have a no on D?
Go ahead, Rupert.
This is Rupert. On D, I had them in the unlikely category. I did like that children and youth experience, but budgetary and supervisory stuff didn't really seem like it was there.
I agree with Rupert. I also had them in a maybe. I did like the fact that they worked with children, but there were some other, so I think for me that would be a maybe as well. Jane, how about you?
That's exactly how I felt. I have known people who have made that bridge from one kind of librarianship to another, but I felt like we had others much stronger candidates. So
Okay.
I suggest we X out D. Then this is Rupert.
Charlie, how do you feel?
I had them as a maybe as well, but I completely see what Gene's talking about.
Okay. All right.
So,
So we feel okay with putting it in a no pile? There's a strong enough
Yes.
reason for a no?
right,
this
Okay.
is D as in dog, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Uh.
Does anybody else have another before G that we feel is not a strong candidate?
I also had C and E crossed
So
off.
say the letter and say a word that goes with that letter so I make sure I get the right letter.
I had C as in Charlie. That was just a maybe. And E as an elephant was a maybe.
Okay. I like both of those candidates, but
I had C and Charlie and Echo. Is that what he's saying? C and
E
C and
is an egg.
E is an
Yeah.
egg. Yeah. C and E, I had them as a yes.
I did as well.
I had them as a yes too.
I had C as a maybe and E as a yes.
E is an egg is a yes for you, Jane? Jean?
E as an egg is a yes, and C as in Charlie was a maybe. I think it was just because they. I don't now. I can't find that one because I've limited experience in working on their education, but
Okay. I think for this one we have enough on the fence that I think for right now I think we should leave them in the in pile and then come back to those two.
Okay.
We're not quite as universally, on the same page as the other ones. So let's go ahead and keep going. Any other before G? Yep.
I had C as in cat as a no and E as an egg as a yes, but I'm certainly willing to keep C, the cat one, in contention.
Okay, so let's leave C and E for right now in the in pile and move on, and then we'll loop back to them if we still feel like, we need to have more discussion on them. We'll
Okay.
err on the side of taking them.
I
Any
had
others? Sorry, Dan. Any others before G that we feel strongly about one way or the other? Jane?
I had a yes next to F as in Frank. I don't know if
Same
I'm the
here.
only one, but I did.
Okay.
I also liked F, and I put a yes next to them.
I did too.
Okay.
Oh, we're talking about no's. Yeah, so F was a yes, sorry.
Yep, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. All right. So we're up to G again. And Dan, remind us what your feeling was about G.
Yeah, I didn't see that they had the much experience with administration. Question mark about Friends of Library stuff and budgeting. I just didn't get any confidence that they knew a lot about that. I had no for G.
Me too. This is Rupert.
me too.
Me
Okay.
too.
Okay. All right. Charlie.
I also had no.
Okay. And that's a consensus there. G is out.
Okay.
Okay. And next.
Okay. H, I had yes. I had no.
Okay, let's stop right there. How do people feel about H?
I had a no.
I had an okay.
H, I had a probably not, but
Charlie?
H was just a maybe for me.
I guess I'd like to keep H in if people are willing for now.
Okay.
Yeah,
First cut.
I agree, Rupert.
Okay, we'll keep H in. That's
Okay.
fine. Okay, I.
I had no. Seem to have, they're well-traveled, but had very little library experience, it seemed like, in a setting like what we have.
Okay, how does everybody else feel?
I agree with Dan because there was really no library experience.
Other than inside of school,
I
sorry,
missed-
college reference library stuff.
Yes, I do see that now.
Okay, Charlie,
No from me.
on I.
No on I for Rupert as well.
Okay, then out. I is out.
J, I also had no. Looked like they had some budgetary little experience 20 years ago. But it looked pretty thin for the last 16 years or so to me.
Okay,
And
how's everybody feel?
Same with me.
I liked J. Oops, sorry. This is
Oh
Rupert.
no, I just wanted to confirm we're talking about Jay. Okay, well, we are. So
Yes.
I liked J, but I didn't feel like I got enough information, so I was willing to keep them in. I felt like they had good child and youth experience
Jane?
and some leadership experience. They were the director of something.
I'm sorry, Rupert, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't realize you were still talking.
Oh, sorry. I liked it that they had, it looked like good children and youth experience and some leadership experience as a director of something.
Jean?
My problem, unless I'm reading the dates wrong. No, my problem was that they had a note saying they've only been able to take part-time work since the beginning of March due to a situation. So will they be able to take a full-time position now?
My recollection is in the cover letter they said they were now able to.
I'm peeking on it right now.
I don't even remember. Oh. Oh.
I'm not seeing it.
First paragraph, dear Board of Trustees, last sentence. I don't want to read it out loud, but
No, I
you can
don't
read it.
know.
The first paragraph.
Okay, I see that. But it isn't clear from anywhere else in the application that they are able to because of the
Situation.
yeah.
I also looked at where they put in their application, where they had worked and what they'd done. It didn't seem like much of any of it really applied to what our application is here, but maybe I'm not adamant about it.
No, I agree, Dan. I didn't think that they had very much experience for what we'd be doing. Awesome experience for something else.
Yeah.
Right. Most of their experience is indeed in a school setting, other than the second, the bottom one on the next to last page.
Okay. What?
Could I just say, I think one of my concerns as I look at my spreadsheet was no knowledge of just sort of current local Massachusetts trends, and it
Mhm.
seemed like much of the experience was out of this area.
Sure.
I'm willing
So
to
that
back
was
down on
my
Jay.
concern, but
Okay. So it sounds like we might be coming to consensus. Is the consensus that Jay is a no?
I can change my vote on that. This is Rupert. I'm willing to back down on that.
Okay, so Rupert's a no. I'm a no. Jean
No.
sounds like a no. Jane, you sound like a no. Dan?
I'm no.
Dan's no. Charlie?
No for me.
Okay. All right.
Hey, I'm excited. I made the consensus a consensus.
I
I
very
changed
nice.
my vote.
All right. K, like Kellogg. How are people feeling about K? Sorry, Dan, I took your job. Sorry, back to you.
That's okay. I had no. The person has great archivist experience, it looks like, but little or no experience in the other things that are listed as a minimum.
I also said no. They had 10 jobs in 15 years. We want someone who's going to hang in there. I want to hire my last boss. I don't want to do this again in a couple of years.
Okay, so Dan sounds like a no. Jean is a no. Rupert, it sounded like
Rupert?
you were a no.
Rupert's a no on K.
yeah,
Jane?
I'm a no.
Okay. Charlie?
I'm a no.
All right. Moving on. L, like llama.
For llama, I also had no. It looked to me like they'd spent a year here, a year there, had some experience in schools, but I didn't see anything much about budgeting other than they had to live by a budget, I think it would imply. I just didn't see that they met the 3 to 5 years of administrative experience or knowledge of budgetary personnel management stuff. I just didn't get that from there for L.
Dan, if I can correct you, it's 3 to 5 years of library. Oh, okay, never mind.
Okay.
I withdraw.
Okay.
I was also a no on L. Many jobs, little time, not much in the public library.
Okay. So a no from Dan, a no from Jean. Rupert?
I'm happy to say no.
Jane?
I had a no.
Okay. Charlie?
I'll be happy to say no.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Or did anyone else have a no? Well, we're going to just all near the end here. We're at M, like Mary. I had, and that's not the name of the person. That's describes the M.
We don't know
I
whether
had-
it's a person or not.
I had it as a maybe. I didn't know that it couldn't really tell if there was 3 to 5 years administrative experience and supervisory. I've got a note here under demonstrates ability to work with library trustees and manage the operations. I got for a few months in 1993, is what they said, if I read it right. And it looks, I just made a note here, great librarian for a long time. I just don't see the involvement as director responsibilities much. I had it as a maybe. What other people might have thought about that.
I was on the no side of maybe.
Okay.
I had some maybe yeses and maybe nos, and this person was sort of a maybe no for me also. Very enthusiastic, but
Yes.
not, and I have, yeah, very enthusiastic, but no director experience. So.
I'd like to disagree, if I can say this discreetly. I believe candidate M has good youth and children experience, and also was I believe, interim director for a period of time that looked like it was an extended period.
Okay.
Well, Rupert, say that last part again.
Candidate M,
Yes.
under
Yes,
work
they were.
experience, has many years of interim director experience.
Yes, it was, Rupert. It
Oh,
was
no.
1986, 1983. I'm sorry, 1993. It
Oh.
was at the North Amherst Library.
Could,
Oh,
could,
I see.
Okay, let's have Dan talk for a minute.
yeah, I'm looking at that also, and it has from 1986 to 1993. They worked at the North Amherst Library, but it says director from March through August of 1993.
Yes.
I stand corrected.
Yeah,
6 months.
Thank you for that.
And again, I think the very, very good person, an excellent, perhaps librarian, and does have the children, teen experience and stuff. I just don't see a whole lot of experience in administration and personnel issues or budget development, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. What are we thinking? All right, so Dan sounds like a no.
I'm leaning to no.
Do we want to? Okay, go ahead. Rupert, Jane, and Charlie, I want to hear from you.
Let me hear from the others first.
Jane?
Oh, well, like I say, I had this person as a maybe no, which to my mind meant that I could probably be convinced or persuaded to put them on the other side, as opposed to the ones I felt were definitely no's. I sort of agree with what's been said. This person sounded, like I said, very enthusiastic, very and very experienced with children, definitely with children's librarian issues. So I'm not strongly wedded to the no. I could
Okay.
go either way.
Charlie, how about you?
Well, I had this person as a maybe. I really did like their enthusiasm, but I did give them a demerit on the 3 to 5 years of administration and that department. But they definitely do have a lot of physical experience. It's just not in the exact role that we wanted. But it was a maybe for me.
Okay. So it seems like we have a few maybes. Why don't we, for purposes of just doing the kind of the first run through, let's put this in a maybe pile and let's come back and see where we are at when we are done with the rest of them. And maybe
Okay.
by that point we'll have gelled more one way or the other. Is that fair?
Okay with me.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
So we'll put that in the maybe pile. Dan, you want to keep going? You're doing a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, and like Nancy or Norman, I don't know which it would be here. So I had that also as a maybe. It just seemed kind of thin on some of the things to me. The skills in leadership, the ability to work with other trustees and budgets and that kind of stuff, and knowledge of budgets. And I don't know that they had 3 to 5 years experience. I couldn't really tell. But I had that on a maybe. That's for N.
Okay. Charlie, how about you? I'll go to you first because I feel like I've been going to you last.
I had them as a no.
Okay, Jane?
I had this
them as
person
a
as a
yes.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So,
I'm
Jane?
Jean, go ahead.
I couldn't tell if she said Jean or Jane either. I had them as a yes, but I'm not really solid on them.
Okay, Jane?
I had the person as a yes, and I'm looking now. I had the person's achievements. I guess I don't want to be too specific, but the institute that this person was part of in 2019, I was impressed with that. It's true. I'm looking. I have to look. I thought, oh, yeah, I see where there's not as much administrative experience. Now, why did I think that? I don't know. I had that checked before, but I was interested in this person. So I don't know for
Okay.
what it's worth.
All right. So we've got Jean and Jane both kind of in the yes department.
Oh,
And Dan and Rupert, I can't remember what you've said now.
I didn't say anything yet.
Okay, what is your vote?
So I thought they were in a maybe department. I felt like they would be a very strong candidate because of strong experience with technology and with adult library functions. But I questioned the youth and children aspect of it, as well as the budgetary management aspect.
Okay, and Dan?
I put him in a maybe, but I would probably lean more toward a no. If I was to vote, if somebody wants to continue on, have it as a maybe, that's okay. You got a couple of yeses and a maybe. I just didn't see the administrative experience, the supervisor experience much, or the and I agree with the technologies is great, but I just didn't see the budgetary and personnel management kind of stuff. Somebody's gonna have to put together all their budgets.
Okay. All right, again, I think maybe let's put it in a maybe because it doesn't seem like we have a strong consensus. And
Well,
let's go on and we'll come back. Oh, yep, Jean?
so it's only Jane and I who felt that this person was a yes, and I feel we have a good group of people already, so I have no problem just passing on this one.
Well, I think Rupert was kind of on the fence too. And I
Oh, I'm
kind of
sorry.
feel like, yeah, so
They weren't my first choice, but a couple of my first choices have already been cut, so I feel like there's room.
Okay.
all right, for now, let's say they've made it through the first read and we'll loop back to them. So Dan, if you wouldn't mind keep going to the next one.
No, with the O, I had a maybe / no. I just didn't see the 3 to 5 years of experience administratively and supervisory. One of the places she worked was a big place. The other one, he, whoever it was a big one. Other one's a little one. I just didn't see the experience or knowledge of budgetary personnel issues and practices, or working closely with boards of trustees or administrators. I just didn't see it there. I'm just looking at my notes here.
Can I play devil's advocate again, Dan? This is Rupert.
Oh, sure.
In the resume, not the current job, but the next most current job, that's 3 years, and at the beginning it says supervised and trained staffs, intern, and volunteers.
yeah.
Yeah,
It does
true.
say that.
But it doesn't talk about budget. You're right. So that's certainly a potential weakness.
Okay, well, I'm content to leave it as a maybe, and let's see what other people have to think.
Charlie, what are you weighing in?
I had them as a maybe.
Okay. Jane?
I had this person as a yes. I do think, yes, I would agree with the budgetary concerns, but I felt like the position that I think Rupert was referring to from 2016 to 2019, is actually a fairly, I mean, I know it may sound like it's just one part of a bigger system, but I think that in that city system, those smaller libraries are given quite a bit of responsibility and independence. I mean, obviously they don't work on the huge city budget, but that really caught my eye, that this person had been the supervisor of that. So I think that was a fairly good experience to my mind. So so this person was a yes to me.
Okay. Jean?
This person was a yes for me. The bigger city that they worked in, I felt their experience there was good. They have done some assistant directorship, and it was the only one where a sense of humor came through.
Okay, great.
So
All right.
if you look under work experience, the third item down, their reason for leaving. I mean,
I see what you mean.
You know, and there was one other thing, I can't think of what it was, but there was another little thing, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good. Oh, and also, I'm pretty sure this was the only one who mentioned COVID-19 as being an issue for libraries, and I thought it was interesting they got it in there that soon.
Oh, yeah.
I agree, Gene. I thought the same thing.
So we want to leave O as a,
Yep, it sounds like O is in.
okay, I'll put it as a yes. P, like Paul or Paula, I had a no. I didn't see any 3 to 5 years or years of experience. I didn't see the working with trustees. Maybe some skills in leadership, I wasn't sure. And I've got moved to a place that's far away from here to be near family.
Hmm.
From
Okay.
the last place.
I will also say, just as a side note, that this, if you notice on the front, this one and application Q is in Queen, both came in after the deadline. So, you know, what we want to do with that, but it is a factor I think that we need to be aware of.
I would, I don't know if it's in order here, but I would move, just as for the record, I would move that we consider both of them. One was 5 minutes late, another was an hour too late. And with all the
Right.
stuff going on today, sound like they came in 3 weeks late and said, hey, look at me. I would just move that we consider both of them, even though they was the same day, but slightly late.
I think we are considering them. I just wanted to, you know, put that out as a factor. If we're talking about
Okay,
management and being able to do things on time, we just want to make note that this was not done on time. So, but I agree with you, Dan. I'm fully willing to give, you know, understanding to the world we're living in right now.
and my thought for making the motion is so that it's clear in the record, if others agree. If they disagree, that's fine. But I'd like it to be clear in the record that we knew they were late, we considered them intentionally.
I see
I'll
what you're
second
saying.
the motion. This is Rupert. I'll second Dan's motion.
Okay. I think that's a good one, Dan, and I think that's wise of you to mention that. So the motion and second is that we are acknowledging the missed deadline and we are considering them regardless of that fact, right? Is that
Correct.
okay?
The two that came in on the right day.
But sure. Okay, so all in favor of that motion? So say,
Aye.
make
Aye.
noise.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Charlie?
I wrote them off for being late. I disqualified them.
Okay, so Charlie's a no.
Okay.
Am I hearing you right, Charlie?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. So we have 5 yay, 1 no.
How strongly do you feel, Charlie?
Well, I didn't even look at their applications because of it. I even it's 5 minutes is 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So my feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, is for the purposes of this vote, you're a no vote. And then
Yes,
for the purposes of us deciding whether we're going to keep them or not, like we've done with all the other applicants, your vote would be no because you didn't even look at them.
that's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So in regards to letter P, go ahead, Dan.
Well, if we voted to consider them, might we ask Charlie to abstain and vote later if you give him a chance to look at them, if we voted to look at them?
What are your feelings? What are your feelings about that, Charlie?
No, I agree with that. I'll do that.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to ask Charlie to vote on something he hasn't reviewed, and this would give him a chance to review them. Okay.
Okay, so for the purposes of deciding though whether they're going to be continued to be in the running or not, we've up to this point kind of had consensus about yes, no, or maybe. So for letter P and letter Q, we still need to do that. We still need to have
Okay.
consensus as to what pile we want to put them in. So what is your, everybody kind of needs to give their feeling about letter applicant P. Jean?
Yeah, I felt applicant P had the least amount of experience out of everybody we looked at.
Okay, so you're a no.
I'm a no.
Okay. Jane?
Yeah, I was also a no for P, for Peter.
Okay. Rupert?
I didn't completely rule P out, but it was near the bottom of my maybe list. So I'm happy to go along that way.
Okay. Dan?
I had as a no. I just didn't. I believe the person was sincere, but if they left some other job to be closer to family, and that place is hundreds of miles from here, I'm just concerned about having them leave family and come here. So, and plus, I didn't see the experience, 3 to 5 years. I didn't see the minimum, ability to work with boards of trustees and stuff. I just didn't see that experience. Item is a clear no.
Okay. All right. So I think the consensus for this one, regardless of everything else, is that it's no.
I agree.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. Let's move on to Q then.
Okay. Q, I had as a yes. To me, it's about the only one I saw that met all the check marks all the way across. And I just didn't see anything bad about the resume or the application.
Okay. Jane, do you want to speak to this one?
I basically agree. I did note that it was late. I thought it's true. I don't want to forget that fact, but otherwise I also would say yes. And I would, I thought this person was a strong candidate. Initially my first look through, I was somehow, I have this technology question mark note to myself, but then when I went back, I believe one of the pieces on the work experience is quite a bit of technology. So yes, this person in my spreadsheet also had checks all the way across.
Jean?
I liked this person. They had the education, they have the experience, they work in a CW Mars library, they have been a director. It seems to me that they would be a good fit. So I was a yes.
Okay. Rupert?
I have a little bit of hesitancy on the supervision. I think in the supervisory part, they've only supervised volunteers, which I think is different. But that didn't constitute something to rule them out in my mind.
Okay. So it sounds like they're strong enough for
Charlie?
yes.
Oh, Charlie's out. Right.
Yeah. Strong enough for yes that we'll keep them in?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So just doing some quick tallying. So if it seems to me, unless, and correct me if I've missed any, it seems to me that in our pile, we, the candidates that we feel should stay in the running are letters C as in cat, E as in egg, F as in Frank, H as in horse, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, O as in Oscar, and Q as in Queen for right now.
That's
Um,
8.
Did
That's
somebody, sorry, did
Oh,
somebody
let's have-
want,
Go ahead, Jean, you talk.
did somebody want applicant D? Because it wasn't one of my first choices, but I have written maybe on it since I got here.
I think we did. I think the consensus was that D as in dog was not going to move forward.
Okay,
Do I have that wrong?
You're correct,
I-
Mackenzie.
Okay.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
correct.
my notes say no school-only experience and limited supervision.
good. That's how I felt originally. Okay.
Okay, so that's 8 candidates, which still seems like a lot, but there are certainly some maybes and there were certainly some yeses. So the ones that I heard were yeses for sure. The consensus was yes. Was C as in cat, E as in egg.
Wait, I'm sorry, Mackenzie, these are the definite yeses?
That's what I'm seeming to remember. If that's not correct,
The
correct.
ones that had a strongest favorable rating.
Yes.
Okay.
The
I
ones that-
have them on a different side in my own little rating here, but I'm not sure why. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to start at the beginning again. So I have C as in cat, E as in egg, F as in Frank, O as in Oscar. Those are the ones that I have that we felt strong enough about were yeses.
Oh, and not Q?
No,
Q's a maybe?
I thought Q was a maybe. So my point in doing this is to kind of go back and make sure that we're all on the same page. So if people feel differently, please speak up.
Okay.
I had Q as an absolute yes.
Yeah, I heard lots of strong yeses for Q.
Okay.
I wasn't one of them, but I heard them.
Okay. All right. I will make Q a yes then. All right. I'm just shuffling my papers around. So we have 5, it sounds like yeses for sure. So let's go back to those possibles or maybes and decide what we want to do with them. So the first possible that I have is letter H. H is in horse.
Oh, right. I'm looking at the wrong one.
Okay.
I think I was the advocate for H.
For H?
I think there was a negative feeling about H, but I said, but wait.
I like H a lot.
I
Okay.
was gonna say, it must have been more than just you, Rupert.
Oh, a lot.
You like H a lot. Okay, let's look at H. Oh, okay. my notes for H are that this person didn't have that much experience at this level, but I also happen to feel that Jean's opinion, I would be willing to go with Jean's opinion as somebody who will be working directly with this person.
Okay, so Dan and Charlie, let's hear your voices.
I'm happy enough to leave the person in as a yes. It looks like they've got maybe a year and a half of experience instead of 3 to 5. But it doesn't, to me, that's not something that just kills the whole thing. And just as a point, I believe Brian had said if someone fails to meet the minimum requirements, we could not continue. It's not been my experience in other cases of other committees and things. I believe the person has enough experience to be a yes for me for an interview, where some of the others where we put no, just had little or no experience in any of this stuff.
Okay, Charlie, do you have strong feelings about this?
I just had them as a maybe yes, so I'm more than happy to put them in the yes category if that's what everyone else feels.
Okay. And Rupert, it sounds like you were are always on the yes, so, okay.
Just in terms of the administration and supervision, if you look at the work experience for candidate H, there's additional experience beyond the current job at the very bottom. It doesn't happen to be in a library, but I think it's relevant.
Yeah, I was also impressed. I believe this is the person who had included some kudos from a select board person, which sometimes they don't get along well, and it speaks volumes to me. And ferreting out from the information the community involved and the difficulties they've had, I'm content to have it as a yes.
Okay, that sounds good. It sounds like everybody's in the yes category. So, Jean.
And I just want to say I was wrong before. This is the second application where they mentioned COVID-19.
Yeah, it is. I did notice that.
Could I also mention something without, I don't know, being too identifying? There were several applicants who have mentioned this project SET, S-E-T. That is actually a really, it's a very competitive thing to get into. To me, when I saw that in several of the applications, that kind of stood out for me as a librarian. I believe it's a Massachusetts program. I almost want to say that Marcia Bernard was somebody who got in and got to go through that program. It's a pretty impressive thing to even just to be accepted into it and to go through it. So I noticed that this person has it too. So
excellent. Well, thank you for that, Jean. We would not have known that otherwise. Okay. So they are now in the yes pile. So we are down to M as in Mary and N as in Nancy. Is my feeling, is my recollection on this. So M as in Mary, they were a maybe. Now that we've had a chance to kind of,
it's stuck now.
yeah, M as in Mary. So now that we've had a chance to kind of think about it, how are people feeling about M?
This is Rupert, and I was, I think, one of the advocates for M. And I think, you know, in a different field of candidates, M would get an interview, but the applicants are just of such high quality. I think maybe the others who have said, yeah, maybe not, are right.
Okay. Charlie or Jean or Jane or Dan? We're on N as in
I'm good
Mary.
with letting it go.
Okay, so that's a no from Jean. Jane,
I'm sorry,
Dan,
what
or
did,
M as in
Jean,
Mary.
no, but what did you say, Jean, about it? I was too busy looking at this.
Oh, it was a no for me originally, and so it was just in the maybe pile because other people, but I didn't feel I had to read my notes on the front. I didn't feel their experience was to direct the library. I think you have to have experience across many areas and not just in one. And I don't want to have all the focus be on the children's room and totally not take care of the fact that we have a lot of shelving right now. It would be great to fill it up with really improve the collection. I'd like to see somebody who could come in and really do that.
okay. Dan or Jane?
I had it as a maybe no, and we've got about 8 candidates anyways. I would lean toward no.
Okay.
Again, not a bad person, but in the way I was reading it, looks like the interim director was for 6 months, 20 years ago, 1993. I don't know that that has a whole lot to do with how things are today. Didn't go for an advanced degree, and I don't place much, maybe don't place as much interest as I should on people who have degrees, but they can have a degree and maybe they will last in their class. You don't know. But I'm not saying that about this applicant. I would just put it as a no. We've got 8 good applicants, I think, at least.
Okay. Charlie, do you feel strongly one way or the other?
No, I'm fine with putting them in the no pile. I see Jean's point, and I totally agree with her. I'm willing to let them go.
Okay. All right, then let's move on.
Now, we
N is
can-
in, I have N as in Nancy as the last one that we need to be looking at.
I thought we were looking at O as well. I thought O was decent.
O we're keeping. O is in the yes pile.
Oh, okay.
I have N as in Nancy as the last one that we have in our maybe pile.
I want to, oh, jeez. This was a strong yes for me, so I want to go back and look at the resume, and I'm having the application and having problems finding it. Okay, hold on.
While you're looking, Jane, I'll just fill in favor of O. I mean N. I'm not completely sold on N, but this is a project set person who has strong technology chops.
Okay, and
I'd just like to mention, if you look at their the associations they belong to, which would be on their third page at the bottom, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah, I think this was somebody I was impressed with, and it's true. It's a little unclear what supervisory experience. Well, no, not there's definitely supervisory experience, I think, in the current position. There may be not as much experience with working with budgets and town government. I think that Dan brought up in the past, but
It is listed in their current position that
Yep.
they that they work budgets, grants, policies.
okay. Yeah, no, this was a person I thought was a strong candidate. So what's the number we're at? I'm starting to get.
N. N is in Nancy.
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3.
So this would be like the 7th candidate if we did go with this
Yeah.
person?
It would be. Which it's not, I mean, I don't know that there's a magic number that we need to get to. I, for me, it's more of like, consensus of the group. If the consensus of the group is to move a person forward, then I think we should move that person forward regardless of how many other people we're moving forward.
Okay.
So this would be number 7, but I don't want us to not take somebody simply because we've reached some sort of number. So let's see if we can get some consensus. So Jane, it sounds like it's a yes for you. Jean is a
Yes.
yes. Rupert?
I'm still in the maybe seat, but let other
Okay.
people talk.
All right. Dan?
I just, the person has impressive qualifications. I just don't see much of anything related to small town library stuff. Impressive, and does this SET thing, which Jane mentioned. I don't know much about, but I certainly take Jane's word. It's a prestigious thing. It says here strengthening talents in librarianship and stuff. I just don't see much of the administrative, other than working at some company. I just don't see much administrative and budget stuff. I would say no, but I would not be offended if other people feel otherwise, and we continue with it.
Okay. Charlie?
I'm fine either way.
Okay.
So let me just sort of say what it is that concerns me. Isn't the administrative side? I think that all of the various associations and committee memberships shows somebody that's really well organized and able to deal with that stuff. My concern about N is inspiring our youth.
And what?
Youth,
Yeah.
the young people, the young adults,
Oh.
inspiring them and drawing them into the library. And it may be that all the technology that the person knows is going to be enough for that. I just don't know. That's really my only concern. And so if we do interview this person, we can find out.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
I'm content enough to, Dean and Jane feel strongly we should interview them. I'm content enough to put them in the yes column for interview.
I think I feel is kind of the same way, Dan. I do feel like they have strong technology and adult, but to Rupert's point, I do wonder about the younger kids. So I do think that it's important that we make sure that we have good questions about children,
Oh,
about teens, about technology.
Gene, I have a question for you on N, because it says in that resume something about STEAM. Which, is that youth or is that children?
It can be adults, but it's almost always children. It's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Occasionally, someone does a STEAM event for adults. I can't find where
Right.
it says it
In the
in
work
this, but
experience, it's not the current job, it's the second job down under positions and duties, STEAM programming, 3D printing.
that would almost definitely involve young adults and kids.
So
Yeah.
there is something there for that. Thank you.
And at the very bottom of that section, it does say, in 4 months of children's, I didn't read the whole sentence. 4 months of children's materials, but it isn't clear what that means. I'm not sure what that meant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sounds like we've got 7. Do we want to revisit and try to make it shorter?
Okay, so just to be clear, N is a yes at this point. We do have 7. I don't know if we're going to I will take again, I'll take consensus, but my feeling is everybody had some pretty good reasons for wanting the people that we've kept. And so going around again, I'm not sure that people really will have changed their minds much, and I'm not sure if we'd be able to narrow it down anymore. I'm comfortable with interviewing 7, but again, if people feel strongly differently, then please speak up and be heard. Nobody has strong feelings.
I'm content to interview 7. It takes a little longer, but they all seem qualified one way or another. And I'm content with interviewing 7.
Okay.
And I would hate to try to cut down to 3 and then find out you didn't like them and say, gee, I wonder what if we talk to the other 3 or 4.
I kind of agree. And if it takes 2 rounds of interviews, then I'd rather do 2 rounds of interviews and have a really good candidate than make our pool really small at the beginning and wish that we had interviewed more people. So Charlie, you're the one I can't see. How are you feeling about this?
I'm fine with that. That works for me.
Okay. All right. So then the next step that I think at this point we would need is to decide when our next meeting is going to be. And at that meeting, we would craft our interview questions, and then a third meeting would be the interviews. Does that sound like a logical timeline to everybody?
Close to me.
Sounds right to me.
Okay. And somebody has a dog in the background. Oh, that's Rupert.
Does Jean have something?
Go ahead, Jean.
I do. I wanted to explain myself. When you were all talking about the paper you had and you used the spreadsheet, I know why I can't find it, because Brian didn't have one for me and he emailed it to me, which is awesome, but I don't have a printer.
Ah,
So I have that, but I read it, but then I couldn't. I was thinking, yeah, I remember having that, but I couldn't use it the way you could.
okay.
Sorry,
Too bad the libraries are closed.
I cannot tell you how inconvenient it is.
Well,
I can completely relate.
This is not how I wanted to interview my new boss.
Oh, wow.
I can understand that. I can't even be seen, so there you go. And so no problem, Jean. You whatever your system you used worked out perfectly. So I'm glad that you were able to make it happen. Does everybody have a calendar that maybe we could consult right now and come up with another date?
Yes.
Yes.
Ideally, and Rupert and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, ideally we wanted to have, again, not knowing this pandemic was coming, ideally we wanted to have the candidate announced in mid-May, if I'm remembering our timeline correctly. I don't have that timeline in front of me. Now, obviously, things are different. The library's not even open, but I do think we should, as best we can, try to have as much overlap with Barbara before she leaves. The new director have overlap as possible, even if it's just simply FaceTiming back and forth, where she can relay as much information as she can without physically being able to walk through the library. So as quickly as we can move this process along in a thoughtful manner, it is really to our advantage.
What is Barbara's last day?
June 24th is what she has told us.
Okay. Thank you.
So that being said, what are people feeling like for a timeline for our next meeting? Again, it would just be to develop the interview questions.
I don't have anywhere else to be, Mackenzie.
I know.
Anytime's fine with me.
I think, Rupert, are you having to leave? Are you able to work from home, or do you have to leave for work?
Right now I'm working from home.
Okay, so I think
doesn't work very well.
I hear you. Charlie, is it my understanding that after 4:30 works for you, or do I have that wrong?
That's best. 5 o'clock works great for me. These meetings at 5 are perfect.
Okay, so why don't we try and set 5 o'clock as our start time? And I'm just looking at my calendar. How about how are we feeling maybe about next Thursday, the 30th? Does that give everybody enough time to go over the interview questions and formulate some?
I would like to have the weekend to do that, and then any time next week is fine with me.
Okay, so the 30th would work for you?
Sure.
Could we make it a little sooner? I don't want to drag it out too long.
Sure. What are you thinking?
I thought the weekend would be plenty of time to sort of come up with our questions or get some ideas, and then like anytime from Monday on.
All right. How does everybody feel about Monday? Charlie, do you feel Monday is enough time for you?
Yeah, Monday's fine.
Okay, so we're looking at Monday, the 27th of April.
I like it.
Okay, 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And again, the agenda item would be to create the interview questions. And then once we have that, then we have our pool and we can go ahead and start setting up interviews. I'm assuming we're going to do it over 2 times at least, because 7 in one day I think would be too much. But we'll talk about that as well on the 27th.
Do you
Sound
want
good?
to do you want to start working on getting some dates for interviews?
Yes.
Just right now, you mean?
Oh, sure. We can start doing that. Yeah. Feel free to throw some out.
Would we want them kind of close together so that everything is still kind of fresh in our mind? Like maybe on 2 consecutive days, or at least
Yeah,
within the same week?
I think so. I think that makes sense to me. That's I mean, it's a 2-night commitment for people. So think about how that fits into your daily life.
My only conflict in the next couple of weeks is Tuesday the 5th. I have something in the evening.
Okay. And I would prefer not the 6th because I have a meeting right before it. So that would be a very long day for me. Could we try for the 7th and the 8th? That's a Thursday and a Friday. How do people feel about that?
Works for me.
All right with me.
Charlie, how do you think about the 7th and the 8th
That works for me.
of
Oh,
May?
geez.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I won't have to go to that. I don't think I have to go to that meeting on the 7th.
Rupert, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Let's do Thursday, Friday. That gives hopefully, some time for our candidates to clear their calendars.
Yeah.
Right. We want to make sure they have some time. And again, it would be like a 5 to whatever time a 5 o'clock start time for sure.
Mhm.
Not before, I should say.
Right. And I know that all of our schedules are pretty flexible. Well, not everybody. I don't know. Friday does seem a little funny to me, but I think I'm I think I'm in a different mindset. Friday, I mean, it shouldn't really matter.
If
Yeah.
our candidate wants to go out dancing on Friday, they're probably not the right candidate.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm thinking, but
Okay.
well.
So,
Okay, yeah, so good.
so on the 27th, we will do the interview questions. We will also set a plan for the interviews, who's going to be on the 7th, who's going to be on the 8th, and then what time and how long. So just be thinking about how long you think our interviews should last, how many we want to do. Do we want to do them over 3 nights? Do we feel like we can do them in 2 nights? I mean, if we start at 5 o'clock, that could be kind of late. We have 7 candidates, so we may need to think about doing a 3rd day. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah.
think about that if we don't start till 5. Other than that, I think we're all set.
Um,
All right.
no,
Thank you all for coming.
I have a couple questions.
Sorry, Dan. Yep. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I have a couple questions. And looking through the ones that we have listed as a yes, there are 2 of them that say it's not okay to contact their present employer. It's unusual that we're doing this in the circumstances we are, where typically your initial round of interviews or an initial round of what we're doing here could be executive session stuff. And then when you get to the final interviews, they're open session and people's employers find out about it, they find out about it. I'd like to ask some guidance from Brian or whatever. When can we know who these people are, and when can be put public as to who they are? So we're not looking at somebody saying, "Hi, you're candidate O," or something.
Yes.
So there's one question. I don't need an answer right now, but I'd like to get the answer somewhere.
Yep. I'm writing it down.
Okay, and the other question, throughout this process, it seems to me like we could get some valuable input from the current director. I don't know how everybody feels about that. I'm not of the opinion that the current director ought to be telling us, here's who you should choose for the next director. But she's been in the business a long time, likely has insights about most or many or perhaps all of these people that we don't know. So I'm asking the board or the committee here, give some thought. I'm not going to be doing much between now and the next meeting other than look at questions. Do we want any participation from the current director or not? If someone had asked me today, I'd say yes, but I could be swayed if somebody had reasons not to. Those are my 2 questions that I had.
Okay.
I want to agree with Dan. I think that the current director does have a lot of information and could offer us guidance on things that we might just not catch.
Okay. I've definitely written them down. I will work on getting some answers and also have you guys be thinking about them. The procedural questions I will work to get answers to. That the final question about the director, think about it on your own. Any other questions that we have?
On the feedback from the director question.
Yep.
I guess the director could be listening but not participating. If we already have a meeting scheduled and it's appropriate, I think what we want to ask is whether it's okay to give the 7 finalists to the director and let her speak up as a participant at that Monday meeting.
I mean,
Wait,
anybody, it's a public meeting, so anybody right now could be attending this meeting.
Right.
And the chair can recognize anybody that is looking to be, to have a voice. It's the discretion of the chair to recognize or not recognize. I think though I would personally just like to get some guidance as to just, again, because this is a weird format, just making sure that we are doing things appropriately, legally, and because we are an appointed body and
Yes.
that person has
I
not
agree.
been appointed to our committee. I need to reconcile all of those types of things, those procedural things.
Right, I agree. Absolutely.
Before I
need to
feel
do that.
comfortable.
Yes, this is Rupert again. I absolutely agree. I was just saying that there might be a mechanism in a public meeting on Monday if we get our ducks in.
Yep, I think something to investigate for sure.
And I guess I would ask, Rupert raised another question. If the committee procedurally, can they or should they, but as a committee, is it their pleasure to provide these 7 applicants information to the current director for any review or comments? I think that's I think that's what you're asking. Is that right, Rupert? And if it is appropriate, my vote would be let her look them over. But so I don't know what everybody else would think. For
I don't
some
have a
reason,
problem with that.
okay. If there's some legal reason we can't or shouldn't, then perhaps not. Or if the rest of the committee doesn't feel likewise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure why I'm having reservations about this. And I suppose our current director, she herself can speak for herself. She may say, great, she'd like to be involved. She may ask not to be. I shouldn't even be thinking that. I guess I'm curious as to what, first of all, I do think she has an amazing wealth of knowledge. I think she is going to be an incredibly tough act to follow. I think I've really personally thought about this a lot, especially sort of being one of the persons on this committee who's not an Irving resident, that we really owe it to the town and to her to find somebody, really, really strong who's going to take this new building into the future. It's just sort of an amazing moment in history. And I have thought a lot about how, to me, it's important that this person be somebody that all of you are very, very comfortable with. I think I'm talking out loud now. I'm sort of voicing my thoughts, so bear with me for just a minute. So maybe it does make sense that you, as the new users of this library and of this person, you would be her or his main, you're the patrons, you're the people. In library school, we are taught that is the ultimate, people that we look to. We are servants of our patrons. And if you all do really, if it's really important to you to have her involvement, yeah, I guess I'm coming around to thinking that, yes, this would be good. I do feel like you all, just listening today, everybody has come to this from a sort of everyone's coming to it from a little different place of your roles already. So it's been interesting to just listen to that too. I mean, I think you should all have faith in yourselves of what you do know of what you want. But yeah, I mean, I guess I was thinking, you're not asking her to give you advice about, I don't know, dealing with town officials or budget. I'm not, I guess that is partly, I'm a little curious, but I certainly now feel a little more like I understand where you're coming from. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry about all of that.
It's fine.
I do think, I mean, there are pros and cons to it all. I think, again, I was, first and foremost, I want to make sure what the process and procedure is. Once we got that cleared, then we can talk about, the philosophy or the philosophical thoughts about whether to do and how much to do, or how much to have her included in this process. So I think for right now, I think the best thing to do is just to kind of, let's do a little bit of research. Let me talk to some other people, Brian and some others, to get those answers, and then we can come back together and have that information and then make a decision one way or the other. And in the meantime, think about it. Think about what would we be looking for her role to be, specifically, so that we have a clear she has a clear understanding of what we're looking for. We have a clear understanding of what we're looking for from her. And then when we meet on the 27th, hopefully I'll have my answers that I can give you, and you guys will have had enough time to think about it and be clear in your own, kind of ahead what your thoughts are about it, and we can go from there. Does that sound okay?
Okay, good.
I
What's
just
up,
wanted
Rick?
to make sure we made room for Charlie to jump in on the conversation as well.
Absolutely. Charlie?
I'm fine with whatever's going on. I don't really have anything to say.
Okay.
Before we go, I want to say thank you to Jean. Sitting there, you look like you're dressed up like Nanook from the north with your
I'm
things
freezing.
on and in the car. And thank you, not just for today, but for, as you've been going along here, working under more adverse conditions than even people who are just quarantined to their home. You're out in the forest somewhere in your car, getting a signal to keep working. So thank you so much for doing that.
Well, thank you, Dan. It is pretty cold here tonight.
Oh,
All right. And I will absolutely want to echo Dan's words as well. And I don't want to keep us any longer because I'm sure Jean wants to turn on the heat. Go ahead, Rupert.
No, I'm agreeing. I'm saying,
Oh, okay.
Well,
All right.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for bearing with
I
the
make a motion.
technical difficulties.
I make a motion that we adjourn. This is Rupert.
Excellent. Somebody want to second that?
I'll
I'll
second
second that.
that.
Okay. Dan's gonna second it. Daniel. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye. All right. So thank you. I'll see you on the 27th.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Thanks for
Thank you.
sharing.
okay. How do we turn on?
That's what I'm
You'll
trying to
figure
figure
it
out.
out when we're watching you go to bed later. It'll be night, Jane.
I think it's that X. I'm going to go X. Well, bye, Jean. Oh my gosh. We got
Bye.